So the full moon on May 23rd is a very active day and time. So there's so much more going on than just simply the full moon. So in addition to something you may already pay attention to if you follow moon cycles and you try to think about what you can bring to fruition, what you want to leave in the past, what you want to begin or plant seeds for, whatever, however you look at moon cycles. It's important to understand that in addition to a full moon, we're getting a lot more to boot. And so it's just a very active time right now in May. The astrology is it's a little more fizzy and bubbly and popping, and there's just more happening. So it's a time of big change and transformation for so many people in the planet, and you probably sense this. And for you personally, it is good to try to drown out the external noise and just think about, what your goals are. And by goal, I don't mean some lofty hard to attain thing to stress you out. It's, so important to come back when you're contemplating something like astrology to what do you want? What do you want? What do you not want? These are very important questions to be asking right now. There's like this in astrology, it can feel sometimes like these doorways opening and closing. And often with the moon cycles, that is exactly the way it's presented, that there are doors opening, doors closing. And there's this idea if you are walking through an open door or shutting a door behind you, there's a threshold. There's this thing called a threshold. What is the threshold? It's this in between, this in between. And what we have right now is a lengthy in between time. So we're in, another word for this is liminal. There's this liminal phase, but it's actually a unique part of the liminal phase, because even in a liminal in between time, you can break this liminal time into, you can parse it out to have its own stages. It's not this big amorphous blob of liminal. There's early liminal, mid liminal. I mean, I'm vastly simplifying liminal even, but then there's late liminal when you're coming out of liminal into something else. That's actually the stage that we're in with liminal. And just to bring it down to the idea of threshold and in between liminal and late liminal, which means like if you greatly slow down, really slow-mo, a person stepping over a threshold. And imagine the threshold is actually like, let's say 5 feet deep. So it's a big threshold, or the person's shrink the person down really small. So that the threshold can be seen as this true in-between state. And that the person's stepping through it, or if you've shrunk them really small, maybe they're kind of stepping slowly through this liminal phase, which you've been in. You've actually been in this liminal phase. And now you're in kind of this late, what I'm terming late liminal phase, that still has a ways to go, but it's more like you're entering the new. You're still in liminal, you're still in the in-between, but you're about to enter new. And everyone's going through this. It's not just one person. We're all subjected to this very prolonged liminal phase, but we're in kind of late liminal phase, is the way I would say it. So meaning if you either made the threshold really long, like a mile long, or toward, we're in the final 2/10 of the mile. And if you shrunk the person down really tiny, they have a few more steps to go, or you have a few more steps to go. So it's an in-between phase that's going to be yielding something. And that's the full moon. It's the fruition. So it's so important when you're in a liminal phase, and especially late liminal phase, and something is coming to fruition and you're gonna be starting something new. You are entering a whole new phase. It's so important that you go inward and figure out, what do you want from this new phase? what do you actually want? Being in late liminal, or this final edge of the threshold that we've been kind of stuck in for a while, um, has had you change your mind and opened your eyes to a number of things. So the point of being in liminal is exactly that, that you have a moment, a pause, and you're still moving around, you're living life, but you're in a weird pause in between phase as you live life. You're stuck in this in between, the land of the in between, and it can feel frustrating, like you don't know where you're going. You can literally feel like there's just fog, darkness and dragons ahead. And you're not convinced of it, but it could be. Or maybe some of you see little pinpoints of light. Maybe some of you see like the light at the end of the tunnel. If you imagine this threshold, it has a tunnel effect. Some of you may have been doing a lot of vision work and kind of figuring out what you want. And so you see it more clearly. And great, like, yay. That's a great way to be in this time. And but also, apart for people who see it, if there's a sense of just wanting to start and do, go, achieve, being in this particular threshold space that we're all kind of stuck in is also important to reflect. This is a time to not rush ahead right at this moment. Right at this moment is not a rush time. It's not a time of high action. In fact, Mars is resting a little bit and all of this hubbub going on right now. Not Mars is never completely still, or inactive. It never would be. None of this stuff would be, but it's a time when the thing you do want to be actively doing is the observing, contemplating, considering, reconsidering, developing insight, whatever sometimes insight just comes on all on its own. It's a great time to be really mindful. I mean, it's always good to be mindful, but right now, I don't know if you've ever been in a moment where you thought something really bad's going to happen to you physically, or that you might actually die. When I was held up at gunpoint in my early mid-20s, and a funny thing happens, and people experience this in car crashes and other sporting events when they see something really bad about to happen. You go into this kind of slow motion thing that, remember I was saying, like, imagine yourself walking in slow motion over this threshold. And what happens in a liminal phase, and there's like something similar that can happen when you sense something really bad could happen. I think your brain actually protects you. And I'm not saying something bad's going to happen. I'm trying to get you to understand what this is like, to get your right brain working and creatively thinking about this. But if you've ever physically been in a situation where you feel like you're in serious danger or something seriously life-altering is about to happen, things suddenly click into this really profound slow motion. And there's this profound heightened sense of clarity. And you notice every split second of time that's passing, and you've calmed down and you're highly observant. Yet it's also like you've gone by a little bit. So it's the slow-mo clarity opportunity that you get. That's also a gift as you move through what could be a very pivotal threshold. And luckily, nothing happened when, I was not killed as I knew I could have been when somebody held a gun to my head. They were holding up and robbing a store where I worked. And, so luckily that worked out fine, but it was a very profound experience. And I understood, having gone through it, that that's what the body does. That's what the brain does to protect you. And it's a very interesting experience. So if you've ever had something like that, you know what I mean. Doesn't mean that something bad's about to happen, but I think when we do get in a place where we're not sure, because we've been stuck in this prolonged threshold, this liminal phase, we can the point of being held at gunpoint is you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if it's going to go really bad or you'll be fine. You'll be saved. You'll live through it. And I think there's a psychological thing like that right now that's not quite as powerful as maybe that one moment was for me, but it's there. It's there underneath the surface where when you're not sure what's going to happen, alarm bells can go off in your system. You may be living in a heightened sense of stress and anxiety, and it may be at a low boil. So the point of talking about all this is to help you understand the time we're in and to help you understand all the feelings that will be present as we go through this time in May. There are lots of feelings, lots of thoughts, a sense of things moving in slow motion, a sense of big change, big things about to happen. And if you feel overwhelmed by this, or you want to make the most of this full moon and May 20th, there's so much more there, but just this time in your life is to really think about, what do I want? How do I want to live? You know how you figure that out? How do I want to feel? How do I want to feel every day? You know, maybe I don't have the feeling all day long every day. Maybe that would be boring, but how do you mostly want to feel, you know, compared to the way you feel now? And maybe some of you, you're feeling great, and that's great. How can I keep creating more of that great feeling? But how do you want to feel? And think about, what would it take to help me feel that way on a daily basis in a healthy way, you know, not a tuned out kind of numb way, but how could I feel good, most or better? And how could what would need to happen in my life so that I could feel that way? These are the things to consider, especially if you want to bring something to fruition. There's so much threshold stuff here. It's also about a new phase coming, a new time coming. So even though you may be starting to see what can't be in your life anymore, it's not like things abruptly end for everybody. It's more like having that liminal clarity, that heightened sense of clarity I was talking about, where everything, you just see it crystal clearly. But it also takes intentionally trying to do that sometimes, because life clouds our vision. Daily worries and anxieties and just busyness can cloud your vision. Even achievement, you know, trying to achieve stuff can cloud your vision, because you get very myopic and tunnel vision in achievement mode, and you don't see all the other stuff. Now's the time to widen your vision and kind of float in this liminal space as you're moving, or you have the perception of slowly moving toward this new phase. It's happening actually quickly, but there's this warped sense of time right now. I don't know if you've noticed it, you know. I'm going to do a separate video on just the kind of overall change. People talk about it in a variety of ways right now, like a new consciousness coming into being, a new dimension. Yeah, people talk about it. They're trying to figure it out. How do you frame what's happening right now? How do you have the discussion around what we're all experiencing? So they're coming up with all the like ascension, and which I'm not making fun of it. It's just we try to find ways to frame things. And there are different ways you can frame it, but everyone's trying to figure it out. Like, what's happening right now? Why does it feel so weird right now? Why do I feel like time has a weird quality right now? Why does my body feel weird right now? So all this stuff is happening while you're going through this time right now. It's a good time to be really focused on how would I like it to be? What would feel good, right, you know, in my life? And how can I bring that about? I can't emphasize it enough. So anyway, that is the full moon.